In this video we will review and demonstrate the QoS functions of StorPool. To do this I have three command line windows open across two servers. PSO1 is a client node only server and PSO9 is a storage node in the StorPool cluster. The first window on the top left will run iostat on PSO1 to show the activity in our test volume. The second on the right will show FIO in PSO1, generating the load against the test volume. And the third at the bottom running on PSO9 will be used to change the IOPS and bandwidth limitations for the test volume. So let's start by looking at the volumes we have on this system. This is a live test environment in which you can see multiple volumes used for VMware, KVM and FIO testing. We're going to be using FIO hybrid, which is a mix of NVMe SSD and HDD. By default, we've assigned all FIO test volumes up to 1 million IOPS and 2 GB per second of throughput, way more than the system can accommodate. From there we can see how the throughput is limited dynamically. Right, let's start the iostat job. This will report back transactions per second, essentially IOPS, and the throughput in megabytes per second read and write. We reference the volume by its source device name, in this case SP7. I've highlighted the bottom line of the iostat output, which shows the data over the last second. The FIO command will run a read IO workload on a file system in the FIO hybrid volume. This is 4K block, a read test with an IO depth of 16, and the test runs for 5 minutes. Now that's started, you can see the elapsed time, which is at the end in brackets ETA, and there is some ramp up. And you can see the throughput reaching around 100k IOPS and about 400 megabytes per second. Okay, let's now throttle this IO. We'll set the limit to about 1000 IOPS throughput. And as we can see, the transactions per second drop to 1000, as we can see in the iostat window. And in the FIO line, we can see that the read IOs drop to 1000 too. Of course, we don't have to make the IOPS and bandwidth changes at the same time. So let's up the IOPS first of all to 20,000. Again, the result of that we can see immediately. Now let's change the bandwidth. We can amend this to either kilobytes, megabytes or gigabytes per second. Let's go with 50 megabytes per second. As we can see, both the iostat and the FIO change immediately to that level, and in fact they ignore the 20,000 IOPS per second limit because obviously the bandwidth limit is lower than the IOPS. If we list our volumes again, we can see that both settings are applied to FIO vol-hybrid. We can now reset the values to being the highest levels, the 1 million IOPS and 2 gigabytes per second, and as you can see, FIO and the iostat both go back to the values that we started with. And that completes the demonstration.